Welcome to our international conference called Renaissance Culture in Japan's Christian Century, 1550 to 1650. Our first speaker today is Kuni Sakamoto, PhD in History of Science, University of Tokyo. He's currently a research fellow of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, and he's mainly working on Scaliger and other writings of Gassendi, Bacon, and Lipsius. And please welcome Dr. Sakamoto.
Thank you, Yoshi, for your introduction. Thank you. I'd like to first thank Ken and Hiro for the arrangement of this wonderful conference. And of course, I'd like to thank all you all coming today. So today, I'd like to talk about angels. What kind of image do you have when hearing the word angel? I think almost all of you have such ones in mind. These angels, yeah, of course, and pretty cute. But how is their wings? They fly around the world to convey messages from God to us. So these days,
Yes, sorry, Kuni wanted the hands-free. I forgot that, sorry.
No problem. Okay. These angels. Oh, Eric. What? Okay. Yeah, they fly around the world to convey messages from God to us. So angels today are generally conceived as divine messengers. But in the pre-modern world, angels had an additional role that is quite unfamiliar to us. This role is depicted very clearly in the medieval manuscript. These two persons, yeah, they are obviously angels with their wings. But what are they doing in this picture? They turn around something. What are they turning around? The answer is they turn around the heavens. So you can see stars here and here. So it is obviously the heavens and stars. So angels in the medieval and early modern period had a role of producing heavenly movement. Therefore, the discussion on angels of this period is intimately connected to cosmology. It should be mentioned here that the theological term angel was identified in the medieval and early modern Aristotelian with unmoved movers, entities that were introduced by Aristotle. And they are often identified with intellects. So today's topic focuses on angels and intellects as heavenly movers. I'd like to talk from now on about how a 16th century Aristotelian, Julius Caesar Scaliger, explained the mechanism of the heavenly movement by invoking angels and intellects. Scaliger was born in Italy in 1484, moved to France in 1520s, and died there in 1558. I should first explain why I selected Scaliger as the main character of the present talk. This is because Johannes Kepler one of the founders of modern astronomy, said that in his youth he had followed Scaliger in attributing the cause of heavenly movement to celestial intellects and angels. Kepler finally abandoned Scaliger's theory and posited the force, power, not intellect, as the cause of the heavenly movement. We can see from the episode among these two that modern astronomy started precisely when Scaliger's theory was rejected. This means that understanding Scaliger's doctrine of intellects and angels as heavenly movers is indispensable for our accurate historical understanding of the emergence of modern astronomy. This is one of the reasons why I pay much attention to what Scaliger expounded on the heavenly movement. In what follows, I will first give a sketch of how Scaliger explained the heavenly movement. Next, I will make some observations that will help place his theory in its historical context. Scaliger presented his theory of angels and intellects in his philosophical masterpiece, Exoteric Exercises, published in Paris in 1557. This work was written as a critique of the Milanese physician Girolamo Cardano. I will mention Cardano later. Scaliger's discussion on the heavenly movement is basically Aristotelian. Each intellect or angel is responsible for moving its own orb. So these are orbs of the heavens. So there are as many heavenly angels as the number of the celestial orbs. On this basic idea, Scaliger elaborates his explanation of the mechanism of the heavenly movement. He starts his discussion with the movement of the first and outermost celestial sphere. Citing Aristotle's metaphysics, he says, I quote, "We read in the 12th book of the metaphysics as follows. The intellect which moves the first orb effectuates it only by understanding itself. The first intellect understands itself as being created by God to move the first orb. Therefore, this understanding is followed not only by the love and agreement of the intellect toward and with God, but also the activity of circulating the mass of the heavens." Scaliger here refers to the Aristotelian unmoved mover, which moves the celestial orb by thinking about itself. However,
Don't worry, we can't cut this time.
the angel. Yeah, angel. Yes. Let's start again. Scaliger here refers to the Aristotelian unmoved mover, which moves the celestial orb by thinking about itself. However, what is recognized by this thinking is very un-Aristotelian. The first intellect recognizes itself as an entity created by God to move the first orb. This conception clearly contradicts Aristotle's idea of the eternal cosmos. Scaliger thus adjusts the theory of Aristotle to the Christian doctrine of creation. Scaliger then goes on to the next problem. How do the other intellects move their own orbs? So not the first intellect, but other more inferior intellects. He claims that they, like the first intellect, also achieve it by understanding themselves. But this time, the self-recognition is not enough. If all the inferior intellects understood themselves alone, they would move their own orbs independently with one another. The result would be that the order of the universe could not be brought about. Therefore, there should be another kind of understanding that guarantees the order and the unity of the universe. So Scaliger says, the inferior intellects have two kinds of understanding. One is the understanding of themselves, through which they move their own orbs. The other is that of the first intellect. They accomplish the unity with the first by the latter kind of understanding. Therefore, just as the first intellect wants to move its orb, these inferior intellects want to move their own orbs because of their understanding of the first intellect. And since this understanding produces in them the will to move the orbs. The inferior intellects understand the first one. This understanding arouses in them the desire to imitate the first. They fulfill this desire through understanding themselves, which causes the movement of their own orbs. This scheme makes it clear why the universe exhibits the orderly structure and movement. As a common source of desire, the first intellect regulates all the movement of the inferior orbs. How can we characterize Scaliger's ideas, which we have examined so far? It is first to be noted that he devotes no discussion to technical programs of astronomy. He does not, for example, explain how the heavenly orbs cause the seemingly irregular motions of the planets. Beyond this competence is also the ability to assess whether Copernicus's heliocentrism should be accepted as a sound astronomical theory. What he actually does is just to dismiss it as a dangerous idea. It is therefore hard to describe Scaliger as a talented astronomer. However, this does not mean that Scaliger's theory of angels and intellects has no significance in intellectual history. This claim can be endorsed when we locate his ideas of intellects and angels in the whole panorama of his worldview. This can be made with the examination of his notion of order. He considers that the order of the universe was introduced when God created all kinds of forms at the beginning of the time, at the beginning of the creation, at the time of the creation. So these kinds of forms were created as entities separate from one another. But they have certain relationships among themselves. These relationships are embodied in hierarchical order. The lowest rank is occupied by the four elements, whereas the first celestial intellect is at the highest level, just below God. The middle position is taken by us, by humans. The hierarchical order can also be observed within the celestial realm, especially in the theories of the celestial intellect. Starting from the first intellect, the theory ends with that of the lunar orb. This structure was designed by God to achieve a specific purpose, which Scaliger explains as follows. The heavens are one because of the order, not because of the single form. Therefore, their performances will also be separate. But by these performances, everything in the present world comes to exist. or heavens make themselves similar to the creator by their motions, through which they make things in the sublunary realm exist. So the control of the first intellect produces the highly organized movement of the heavenly orbs. It is by perpetually continuing these motions that the heavens become similar to God, the eternal entity. At the same time, the heavens carry out another task. By their orderly movements, the heavens preserve the order of the sublunary region. Scaliger expounds on the relationship between the heavens and the sublunary world as follows. The superior things are, so to speak, the preservers of the inferior forms. For the cause of causes, God protects what he made, sublunary things, through what he made, the heavens. Therefore, we are moved because the heavens are moved. We are alive because the heavens are alive. We exist because the heavens exist. God keeps the world from dissolving into a chaotic state, but he does not he does not carry out that preservation by himself. He maintains the order and the unity of the universe through the intermediary of the heavens. It is here that what he intends in formulating his theory of the celestial intellect emerges. It is not to provide a technical astronomical theory. Rather, he aims to present a cosmology that underpins his general worldview, where various entities are hierarchically distributed to preserve the order of the universe. This worldview, which I have examined so far, is shaped by the new kind of philosophy that Scaliger has to face. His art opponent, Cardano, claims that there is one and only one power which pervades the universe and actualizes every phenomenon. Scaliger interprets this theory as destroying the doctrine of substantial form and therefore Aristotle's philosophy. So he contends that any single power cannot actualize various phenomena observed in the world. Rather, plural kinds of forms which are hierarchically organized should be admitted in the world. Cardano and Scaliger propose two sharply divided doctrines about how many active principles should be admitted in the world. Yeah. So let me finish my presentation from here. Cardano and Scaliger propose two sharply divided doctrines about how many kinds of active principles should be admitted to the world. Cardano posits only one, whereas Scaliger admits many forms. This opposition between monistic and pluralistic worldviews was to become a recurrent topic of debate in early modern philosophy. Some Italian intellectuals, such as Thomas Campanella, deprived the substantial form of any explanatory role and postulated the power permeating throughout the world. This type of theory was endorsed by the Cambridge Platonists and the chemical philosophers in the 17th century. In contrast, Leibniz defended the doctrine of substantial form by saying, I quote, "Besides God, there are numerous particular active beings. Since there are numerous actions and passions which are particular and contrary, and should not be ascribed to the same subject, unquote. This statement could have been written by Scaliger. I'm not claiming here that Leibniz constructed his theory on the basis of Scaliger's work. Rather, I'd like to point out that the worldview endorsed by Scaliger remained as a powerful doctrinal option even in the late 17th century. In other words, Scaliger's philosophy marked the earliest stage of the dispute that was to dominate the Western intellectual scene for over 100 years. It is against this historical perspective that his cosmological angelology should be evaluated. It may not be a promising astronomical theory, but its trajectory on the subsequent development of metaphysics is far-reaching. But how far-reaching? Not chronologically, but geographically. Was Scaliger's cosmology and his theory of celestial intellects and angels transmitted to Japan in its Christian century? Ryuji has once told me that a treatise on angels was written in, I think, in the 16th century in this country. Do this or other books contain any explicit or implicit reference to Scaliger's angelology? In this regard, Scaliger's celestial angelology not only enables us to understand the doctrinal matrix from which modern astronomy is planned, but also affords a possibility of connecting East and West from the Aristotelian, or so to speak, angelic perspective. But what I'm saying now is I should admit, speculative. So I'd like now to pass my speculation to open discussion among you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction into this amazing event, and has provided us with an interesting worldview of the Renaissance culture, with the relationship between God, angels, the multiforms, and then single form. Now, I would like to open the questions to the floor, and whoever has a question regarding a specific the part of Scaliger's presentation, or the connection with Japan's Christian century. So that question is open to the floor.
Thank you for your wonderful paper. You mentioned at some point that Scaliger thought that the heavens were alive. Could you explain that a little bit? Did you think that the celestial spheres or the celestial bodies themselves were actually ensouled or animated? Or could you expound on that a little bit?
Thank you, Darius, for a very good question. There is some ambiguity in Scaliger's conception of the heavens as animals or not. But generally, he rejected the idea that the world is ensouled by one form or soul, because it can be easily connected to Cardano's type of the world, where one form dominates the world, and one form regulates all the phenomena in the world. So he generally rejected the position that the soul, the world, or the heaven in general are ensouled. But in one point at least, Scaliger admitted that the world itself was regulated by one form. It is where he explained why there in the world there is no void. The void cannot occur in the world because the world itself detests it. because void is non-being, and non-being is what the world most dislikes. So in that point, only in that point, I think Scaliger somehow introduces the idea of the one form which regulates the world, and this form maybe can be identified with a kind of world soul. And in this respect, at least, there is a conception in Scaliger as the heavens ensouled as heavens of ensouled entities. So this is what I can say to the question.
Follow-up step or any other question?
Yes, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I'm Yuji Hiraoka from Prefectural University of Sakamoto. This is not a question, but just a comment. It was before my comment. Yeah. And yes, it's true that the angels as a heavenly mover were taught in the Japan curriculum in late 16th and early 17th century. And because I found such text in Latin, not only in Latin, but in its Japanese translation, in the textbook written by Peter Gomez, that picture was shown on screen. And Peter Gomez discussed, after he discussed the number of heavens and the period of circulation, after that, he explained that those heavenly orbs and spheres were moved by the index. At the time, he used, I don't remember which word, which Latin word he used, but intelligence. So, but I don't know any other sources, for example, in the Christian editions, about such notion of the heavenly mover, but that kind of things were actually taught, at least in college, to students who was expected to be the father, priest, Japan's Christians, Japan's judge. That's all.
Would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, so I'd like to ask one question. Is there any course where students in Japan were taught the more theological kind of angelology, not this type of cosmology, but the more theological kind?
I really don't know, but I can say one thing that such explanation was taught not in the cosmological textbook, but was included in the theoretical textbook. So the missionary in Japan at the time, possible that they, I don't know why, but they decided not to teach such things in the cosmology, but the theoretical one.
I think it is because it was expounded in Peter Lombard's sentences. This is why they included it in theological part. Yes. This is my guess.
Thank you very much. And, Dr. Hiroka's presentation will be this afternoon, so I look forward to that. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. It is well known, and historians often say that Scaliger's philosophy was very welcome among Protestants, especially in Germany, and that might explain also the affiliation toward anti-Leibniz and so on. But my question is, how were the reactions of Jesuit writers toward against Scaliger's ideas? in general and especially cosmological aspects.
Jesuits' reaction to that
Yeah,
cosmology.
any Jesuit in Europe, in general, I would say, not in Japan, but not only Spanish, but also, do they quote?
As far as I know, they certainly quote Scaliger's passages from these type of discussions, and they quote it as a kind of confirmation of their own theories. So they did not quote Scaliger as an opponent or something like that, and they just quote Scaliger's passages to endorse their own opinions. For example, to endorse their opinions on the unity and order of the universe or harmonious structure of the universe. So in that sense, Scaliger's work will function as a kind of doctrinal, very useful resources even among the Jesuits, like his work functioned in German universities, German Protestant universities. This is all what I can say now.
But for example, I'd like to ask Yuji. Sorry. For example, does Gomez mention Scaliger in somewhere? Now, yeah.
No any particular name. What is that?
Not only Scaliger, but in general. Okay.
Because of private allies, almost a
Yes. So my next question is that Scaliger's interpretation comes close to Thomas, or it's something totally different?
He sometimes quotes Aquinas' passages about his angelology, and he certainly adopts some ideas of Aquinas. But what he most heavily relies on elaborating his theory on angels, especially theological type of angelology, is most frequently cited source is Scotus. Scotus's commentary on sentences. He was engaged in it very, very seriously. So in that sense, I think this is a very promising way to investigate Scaliger's angelology is to investigate his reliance on Scotus. Because he was from his youth very familiar with Scottish sentences, and he was taught by Scottish theologians in the Padua University. So this is, I think, the way to go.
This is interesting.
Great. So, any other questions?
My name is Shigeru Kanzaki. I'm a historian of ancient philosophy, and I'm interested in your explanation of celestial movements, relation with angels. And that I think Mr. Hirai mentioned the Thomistic background is, I'm very concerned because in Scaliger's view, how individuate angels, because angel has no matter, of course. So the principle of the individuation is a very difficult thing to explain the individuality of the angels. As far as you said that it's very crucial for angel to move his or her own orbit, circular movement. So how they are individuated? And very bizarre question: how many angels who engage in such activities?
Great. Yeah, it's a very serious question. And this is a very difficulty Scaliger had to face when elaborating his angelology. And his answer is basically that is basically that angels are individuated by a kind of matter, not the matter exactly like that we have, but they have some different kind of matter because there is a logical necessity to distinguish different angels from one another. And he does not delve into this question very deeply. So it is what I can say about this theory of individuation of angels. So angels are individuated by a kind of matter, a matter that exists only to individuate them.
Sorry, what kind of matter? Because in original Aristotelian theory, in the celestial field, there is one only quintessence, that ether. So there is no difference between the other four elements.
To my knowledge, he does not introduce his ether as a kind of matter of angels. I think he distinguishes ether from what makes angels. So yeah, he introduces ether only to describe the process of generation in sublunary world. This is a crucial role attached to ether in Scaliger's scheme of philosophy. So he sharply distinguishes ether from what makes angels. And the next question: how many numbers of angels are engaged in the celestial movement? Yeah, this is a very difficult question, but I think as I said, he's not an astronomer like Copernicus or other things. So he, I think, just accepts Aristotle's not Hermic, but Aristotle's type of distinct type of world structure is what Scaliger accepted as a genuine structure of the universe. But as you well know, even in Aristotle's schemes, there were many, 45 or something like that number, 54. Okay, 54 number of angels. But Scaliger does not seem to pay much attention to the exact number of angels or celestial interests in his argument on that. Because what he is really interested in is to guarantee the order and unity of the universe in a way different from the way Cardano set forth in his philosophy. What he aims to in his angelology is to present a pluralistic worldview, clearly contradicting Cardano's monistic worldview. So this focus of his attention deprived him of an opportunity to delve into that astronomically or philosophically interesting question. This is all what I can say now.
Thank you very much. And in the time has come to the end, even though this is a very interesting question, and I'm sure throughout the session, throughout the day, these questions come in and we can discuss that again. So can we give one more hand to Dr. Sakamoto? And I'd like to introduce next speaker.